Okay, Channel 79, we are ready to go, and we are in night 2 of Board of Selectmen budget workshops. I will turn it over to Town Administrator Kate Bush.
Okay. We are going to work through tonight general government, planning and community environment, and human services. So we can just start at the very beginning. Board of Selectmen budget.
Yep. First, let me say that, as Kate told us last night, in the beginning of every government section, we have budget drivers, accomplishments, objectives, and some performance measures. So when we're going through these workshops, unless you have a specific question about something that you've read in that text part of the budget, we'll move right into the numbers, okay? But happy to answer any questions that come up for you in the text.
And we do, at the end of the process, plan to survey all of you and Board of Finance and all, see what do you guys find useful in things like this, to help us learn, what's extraneous, what you'd like to see that we don't have. So
Good idea.
keep trying to make the budget look better.
Thank you.
Could I have a question to open?
Absolutely.
The significance, you mentioned it last night, of transfers being shown here.
Yes.
Transfers are what we did at the end of the fiscal year last year, like in August.
We do them throughout the year,
Throughout the year.
Yeah.
but there's a lot at the end of the year.
At the end, right?
Yes.
So these were to adjust the budgets that were put in place, and now we put the transfers in to give them the revised.
Right.
So if you have any significant transfer that we should be aware of, I just hope you bring it to our attention.
Okay, yeah.
That's all.
Okay.
Okay. I mean, I remember a lot of them were mostly salary things.
Right, there's a lot of salary things because
Right.
the non-reps, we don't do the salaries.
Right.
Then the other things that happen during the year are usually minor overruns. There's a lot that you don't see because Jen and I have the authority to make transfers if they're under a certain dollar amount. But one of the points of putting them in here was to see if there are accounts that are consistently underfunded.
Okay.
Yeah.
But if there's any that we should pay attention to, just
Yes.
draw our attention to it, other than the usual stuff, okay? Thank you.
So before we get going, one of the things I want to point out with regard to the payroll line items is that each payroll line item reflects 26.2 pay periods. Last year was 26 pay periods, 26 even. So in some places where there's not really a change or a step increase, you might see a little bit more money, and that's because of the 2 days.
You're trying to make it exact.
We do make it exact because we have to accrue the expenses to the period in which they're earned. So we do that. In the Board of Selectmen budget, the first thing I'm going to point out to you is the full-time salary includes the first selectman salary and one of the admins. The first selectman salary is set by the Board of Finance for the term of office. With a new term starting in the fall, you should expect that they will change this. If you all have any opinions on it, you should direct those opinions to the Board of Finance.
And just one note, in case you're interested to know this, the personnel, medical and dental only applies to my administrative staff. I don't take medical and dental from the town, but it's available should I desire to do that.
We've bumped up the budget for travel, recognizing historic levels of travel and that the job does require more travel than it did in years past.
Right.
And then I'm going to give you your first cut of the evening.
Before we get to that really good news, can we go back to revenues?
Oh, sure.
So, couple things. What in the world is tourist camp permits?
Oh, yeah, $50.
It's an insignificant amount, but I've just
But we get
never
it
seen
every
it before.
year, and, I'll have to ask that, what exactly it is.
Okay.
I can't think
But
of the, I can't think of the
We have a couple
term.
of those little oddities, like rooming houses and,
Yeah, there are a couple of places down on the post road near the Stanford line that they were rooms for tourists. I can't think of the old-fashioned
Okay.
phrase they used to use. And one of those must still get a
Still,
license.
yeah.
Interesting.
We have a camp.
And then Kate, I do have a
Not a
question.
camp, no, it's a house.
Miscellaneous other revenue, you've taken that, have you moved, what was that line that's, haven't proposed anything for this year?
The 96, it was as high as 96.5. What's the change?
Maybe just
I
recap it.
think it's probably, it might be a grant, or it might be a place where we've stashed just, things that had no other place, no other home. But why we took it out, I don't know, because I didn't do that.
Yeah, miscellaneous state grants going down 45,000 also. I mean, I realize what the trajectory is, but it's another reduction.
Yeah, I'm just gonna look that up, see the history. Okay. We've got a whole bunch of miscellaneous on this Selectmen.
If it slows us down too much, we can
Mhm.
aggregate our
Absolutely.
questions and come back to it, Kate.
Yeah,
Sure.
Well, I'm almost there. Okay. Yeah, I'm not gonna be able to tell you anything
Okay.
from here, so
Okay.
Okay,
let me just write that down.
Sure.
write down that and operating transfers, other fund.
Operating transfers, other fund? That would be, that I believe is the parking fund. It's either parking fund or it could be private duty, where we charge another fund for the services that the general fund provides.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay?
Yep.
Okay, so under the Board of Selectmen budget, the dues and professional licenses. I have the wrong number in there for the CCM dues, so we can cut that by 1125. It should be, the account should be staying flat, no increase.
I promise I didn't plant that cut straight
No,
up.
that was my mistake.
service?
Dues and professional.
Dues and
Dues and
professional
professional
licenses.
Under clerical services.
Okay.
It's under,
Yep, I got it, I
Yep.
got it.
Other than that, there really is nothing of note
Yep.
in this budget. So if you're all good there.
yep,
I do like the fact that you have this percent variance from revised, that,
Yep.
it's very
Yeah.
handy to have that, thank you.
Good. Okay, so next up is my budget.
In the wording, I just, because we said ask wording, I just needed to hear just a little bit about the flexible hours concept that you've been working on.
So, we were trying to get that, we were trying to get it so we could do something with the whole town hall where we would maybe be open later one night and close, say, on Friday. We couldn't get union agreement that would allow us to do that, but what we have done, we have 3 employees right now that we're piloting this. The fire marshal and the deputy fire marshal and the HR director. So, to use the fire marshal as an example, one is off on Mondays and one is off on Fridays. The other 4 days of the week, they work the full 35 hours. So they're coming in earlier, they're starting at 7:30 in the morning, staying till 4:45. So part of the deal is that between 7:30 and 8:30, they are not open to the general public. That time is for plan review, for appointments with contractors who, it benefits the contractors to have them available at 7:30 to make those appointments. So it's also a quality of life thing for the employees. So we're doing this on a trial for 3 months to see how it works, because there are a lot of complications with it. Like, how do holidays work when you're already supposed to be off on Monday?
Right.
So we're piloting that with those 3 employees to see how it might work and to see if in general we can do that in other offices where it provides a benefit to the citizens. You know, like think about the building department. We already do have one employee who works different hours. You know, if you could come in at 7:30 to get your building permit, that might be a positive for the citizens or for the contractors. And then again, it's a quality of life thing for the employees. The whole concept began with thinking about our department heads, and that it's more difficult to attract quality employees from within the region. We're getting people from further and further away. We have multiple department heads and high-level non-reps that are commuting an hour or more to work. So if we can find a way to provide them a 4-day work week and at the same time provide greater service to our citizens, you know, we're gonna try and do that.
Thank you.
There are town halls across the state that have a variety of hours. Notable is Danbury, that's actually closed on Fridays entirely.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's some, Shelton is one that's actually, most of the offices are closed on Monday, but they keep certain offices like the tax collector and the town clerk open 5 days a week. But everybody else is off.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Maybe you can also review with us, because it's been a little while since we've talked about it, the evaluate options for the renovation of the basement of 35 Leroy. Just to keep that in everybody's minds, that the basement of 35 Leroy, at least a significant portion thereof is in the control of the town, not the Board of Education.
Yeah, so actually at the beginning of this month, I put out an RFP for architectural services to do schematics, and we did not get enough response to the RFP because we were having a mandatory walkthrough. We wanted everybody to come and see the space, walk through it before they proposed. Did not get sufficient response, so we pulled the RFP. Going to put it back out probably after this round of the budget. I'll put it back out, and we're going to send it out to some people specifically and make sure that they get it, and hope to get some more interest in it. But the idea is for them to look at the space. The primary focus would be to look at it as a possible location for the probate court. I think it really would be well suited for it with the office space and the availability of the large meeting room. But we'd also like it to be where you could close off those offices at night and that meeting room would be available for town meetings. It has the right kind of access. I think it's doable. The question would be how much would it cost? So.
Thank you.
Okay. I don't have revenues. Well, not under the first part of the budget. There are no new programs in my budget. It's strictly a status quo budget. The salary represents my salary and a portion of one of the administrative assistants. HR picks up the other portion of that. In the support part of the budget, we do have the parking tickets.
Kate, one question, the support, the receptionist, the change is that part of her time is parking versus?
So, no, actually, when last year I had asked to have her move from part-time, 20 hours, to full-time, 35. When that was approved in the budget, and then the employee who occupied the position, she asked if it could be 30 hours. She didn't want to accept it at 35, but she would accept it at 30. So we agreed to that. So that's why the FTE is lower. And so then when you go to the next part of the budget, that's why there's a reduction in the full-time salary.
Yep.
Okay?
You're expecting less parking tickets, huh?
We are expecting yes, and that revenue it's shared with the parking fund, so this was based on the actuals. I wouldn't say we're necessarily expecting less parking tickets,
You overestimated this year.
yes.
Okay.
Okay. There's a minor reduction in the Channel 79 operators line item, that's based on actuals. The increase in professional services is for adding the parking ticket processing. We moved that from the police department budget into the town administrative budget, so that's where the increase came in fiscal 18-19, that transfer in. And then I am proposing including $4,600 to purchase software, actually a web service, that would allow for electronic preparation of agendas and minutes and compilation of all those things. So you set up your agenda template and all the agenda items are submitted to you electronically, and we generate the agenda off of that. It can be shared, disseminated through that. The minutes can be done right in that software program. It's the company that does our code online.
Okay.
Um,
It actually would be good, and would that sort of be town-wide, all
It could be
boards, all
townwide, all
commissions?
boards, all commissions,
Because they're
yes.
not consistent between boards
In
and
the way that
commissions.
agendas are
Yeah.
prepared, yes.
Okay.
But it would also make sharing the agendas much easier.
Mhm.
And that would be something that we could strongly encourage everyone to use.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Copy equipment.
Copy equipment, that's based on the actual costs of our copiers, the leases for the copiers. We're looking at, in the upcoming year, putting in some controls. We found, like, a lot of color copying. I think I'm turning into Carl.
It sounds like it. You're not rolling your eyes, so no.
The use of color copies, sometimes we think is being abused, when it doesn't necessarily have to be. Things don't need to be in color. So we experimented with putting a code on the printer downstairs in the mailroom to try and stop that. So we're looking at doing some, continuing along with that to try and manage our copier costs.
I will say, though, with OpenGov and the ability to do charts and graphs, color's important when you make copies.
Yes, and that's why, like, when we do the quarterly department head reports, the staff takes a look at the report, comes to them in color, and they'll make a decision whether or not it needs to be in color
Got it.
or if it can stay in the gray and white. But, we're talking about some of our lesser boards and commissions, maybe including pictures with their minutes. Do you need to have those pictures? Do you need to have them in color?
Okay.
Okay?
Yep.
So if you're all good with that,
Everything okay? Yeah. Okay.
we can move to HR.
On the data,
Yeah.
do you have any information about what is the biggest cause of lost workdays, where the most lost workdays are?
Workers' comp, you mean?
Off the top of my head, no.
Okay, just curious.
I'm sure Lori has that data.
I'm sure she does, I'm just curious as to what, if there's any particular area that we have to focus on.
I'm trying to think, I don't recall anything outstanding, but,
I will say that that's one of the benefits of being a member of the Kerma Insurance Company, that they work very closely with the town. They
Mhm.
watch our experience and the reasons why we have workers' comp claims, and then recommend trainings or other measures to help us avoid those claims in the future.
Okay?
There are no program changes here. It's really a status quo budget.
Any questions on HR?
Okay.
Okay.
Finance Department. So, what I want to point out here is the change in the variance in the budget for full-time staffing that does not represent any kind of staffing change. In the fall of 2018, our payroll administrator retired. While we were deciding how we were going to move forward with payroll, whether we would keep it in-house or outsource it, we hired a temp. So we moved money from the full-time salary to the professional services, because we paid a temp, a staffing agency. So this is just moving things back. We did make the decision we're going to stay with in-house payroll preparation. So we actually, hopefully we'll be hiring a payroll administrator sometime in the next month or so.
Speaking of that, on page 26 with the various metrics, the cost per payroll payment is now $4.71, down from the $6 region. Is that
Yep.
because we're going to the twice?
Because
payment
we
that
moved, because we moved Public Works from weekly to bi-weekly payroll.
That's the principal reason.
That's the biggest reason, yeah.
Fine.
Yeah. There also, we had our software company come in and do an assessment of the payroll system and the HR system, how we were using it. And one of the things we're going to be having installed pretty soon, we have an employee self-service program being installed and a total content management that actually the Board of Ed had purchased a few years ago, so we can use it as well. The content management, what that will allow us to do is instead of giving people who have direct deposit a paper stub, we'll be able to email the advice to them. So we'll have even further savings in that regard. And I'll tell you, Jen is working on other things too, like we're working to pay as much as we can by direct deposit, not just for employees, but if there's a vendor check, like a reimbursement to an employee, you get that through direct deposit. We're also working, hopefully with vendors, we're going to be moving to, if vendors are willing to be paid by ACH, we'll do that rather than the checks.
Especially your recurring ones.
Yeah. But it's pretty easy, if they're willing to have it, it's pretty easy in our accounting system to create that file and do it.
It's a low-cost way of doing it.
It is.
Yeah.
So the other changes here, we're looking at conferences and meetings. The increase there is to allow us to send the assistant finance director to either the regional government finance officers conference or to the Munis conference. So I think that's important for staff development. And in the training services line, we are going to be purchasing a program with Munis, our software provider, that gives us 4 training days a year, 1 conference registration, and they will assess our use of Munis every 3 years and tell us basically what we're missing out on, what we need to do better. But I think the training days is the most important thing.
Sorry, that's a Munis module?
It's not a module, we're basically buying a package of training from Munis.
Okay. Sure.
Last year when we were, when the Board of Finance was reviewing the investment income, I know there was some concern that it might be low. And looking at the year-to-date and the fact that the Fed is anticipating to raise the rate at least twice during the coming year, just 300,000 looks low. Based upon that, our general fund has grown, and rates and Fed funds are higher. It's potentially an opportunity for you to review.
will raise that question with the treasurer.
Thank you. You can imagine that was good.
Okay.
Speaking of treasurer.
Speaking of the treasurer, this is a very small budget. There are no changes. It's status quo.
Looking at the personnel costs, really, she's working for insurance, isn't she?
No comment?
No, thank you. When your insurance cost equals the salary, it's, okay. It's still probably a good bargain anyway, the work that's done.
Then the next up is Board of Finance. This is the cost of having a secretary for their meetings and the audit. It's the town's share of the audit. The full cost of the audit is higher. The Board of Ed picks up a share of that.
Yeah, I was just, in that particular pay, on page 35, you have that audit, the professional services, I figured is audit, correct?
Mhm. Yes.
Okay, the budget's for 38 for this year, and year-to-date, it's already 55. Is there an error there, or is it just you got the Board of Ed, in case you got the whole audit costs in there?
Let me just take a quick look.
It was only the 55 that caught my eye.
It would help if I got the right number.
I can get back later.
It looks to me like they haven't billed the Board of Ed for their share of the budget yet, or for their share of the audit yet.
I mean, the year-to-date, they haven't
Yes,
allocated?
yes, they
Okay.
haven't allocated it back to the Board of Ed.
Okay, fine.
Kate, actually, listening to one of Jamie's comments and one of Kip's comments, is there a way that you can let us know how many employees are not taking benefits that they're entitled to, or an approximate dollar amount? Because that could definitely change things, one way or the other.
Well, for the majority of employees, well, I shouldn't say the majority, for a number of the employees, depending on your bargaining unit, if they don't take the benefits, they get, they receive a payment for a share of the savings.
Okay.
So we do have that amount in the medical insurance budget. So when we get there, we can look at, it's broken down and tell you how many people currently do not take it.
Okay.
So you, to remember that.
Yeah, okay.
The first selectman doesn't get a payout for the savings, FYI.
I had a
Yeah.
feeling.
Just want to be clear.
Not in your contract?
But it could change things either way, if there are people that are taking it, and then all of a sudden, the
Yeah.
position changes, I mean, just more information, or vice versa, either way.
Yeah, the thing is, for the majority of the positions, we do have to offer it,
Yeah.
you know.
Absolutely.
So it wouldn't, and it's not something you can usually
You can't
know.
anticipate, no.
You can't anticipate, you know.
Right. The only thing it could affect is, let's say there were, 5 people that weren't taking it, and then next year, those same positions all of a sudden are taking it.
Yes,
That's-
yeah, that could have an impact on the medical
Yeah.
insurance budget, yeah.
Yeah.
When is your sign up? I mean,
Open enrollment is done in May for July 1st,
that's what I was thinking, that it must
Yeah.
have been done earlier.
yeah. And we have to, if you decline the insurance, you have to provide proof that you have it available to you elsewhere,
So spouse.
yeah.
Okay.
So next up is the assessor.
I just had a question on the data on page 38. Do we know why the corrections for motor vehicles is so high? Why the number is 10% of the vehicles
I'm not sure if it's all corrections or some of it is adds, but, I'm going to guess that it's bad data coming from the state.
Department of Motor Vehicles.
Yeah.
Thank you,
But
Steve.
it may also include things like, you know, you move out of town. They might consider that a correction, even though it's not
Yeah.
an error, but you move, so we've got to take you off the list.
Well,
Is that also supplemental motor vehicle?
That's what I was
Supplemental
thinking.
motor, it could be supplemental
Yeah.
motor vehicle as well.
What is supplemental motor vehicle?
If you, so the grand list is dated October 1.
Right.
Okay,
Just got that
so
note.
if you get your car after the grand list date, we still send you a bill.
Thank you.
You're welcome. It's the same, it does work the same for construction. If you reach a certain point in the construction of your new home after the grand list date,
Right.
we will send you a supplemental bill.
Got it.
It can also be people moving in. There was an instance where somebody moved into town.
Right.
Car was registered in Stanford. Where would you prefer to have your car registered?
Mhm. Yep. And then that shows up in supplemental motor vehicle, I believe.
Yes, it would.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay. So what we're seeing here, actually, the increase in the full-time salary here does partly reflect a step for one employee. It's not just the 0.2 days. And the training budget covers 3 employees. We do have now 3 certified assessors. And in order to maintain their certification, they have to earn so many credits a year. And otherwise, this is status quo.
Mhm.
The cost of Tyler this year, was that in the budget?
For the reval,
Yeah,
that's a capital item, actually.
thank you. I knew that's why it wasn't here.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure I did.
So on the next page, we have overtime for the Board of Assessment Appeals, and you'll see that it's dropping. And that's because in the bulk of the assessment appeals that go to the Board of Assessment Appeals, they happen this fiscal year. And the overtime is the staff, you know, our sort of, you know, our 2 union employees who have to staff those meetings. So the majority of those will happen this year. It'll drop off next year.
Yeah, because it's interesting, because I was looking at the data sheet on page 38, where he's talking about expecting 200 cases in front of the Board of Assessment Appeals, but I didn't see a number go up. Your point is, it's all really in this fiscal year.
Correct.
Got it? Gotta be careful watching this stuff. Slippery.
Okay, and then we have the tax collector.
Here's someone with data.
Yeah.
Lord.
And for those who didn't, I think the question was asked last night, the reason the tax number is so low, and it's because it's reflecting only the town portion of the budget, until we get that Board of Ed number in there.
Mhm.
Yeah, show a difference of $94 million is kind of interesting.
Hey, can you say that again?
When you look at the revenues, the town administrator proposed number for property taxes is quite,
Oh, okay, it's
Yeah.
39.
Yeah.
Okay, right. Okay. But on our collection rate,
our collection rate is,
Slightly down,
it's
just,
slightly down this year.
yep.
yes.
And based upon the changes that the,
Are you talking about the year-to-date collection rate?
I know that's down as well.
Right, so, you know, one thing to keep in mind is last year was an anomaly. We had a lot of people take advantage of paying in December before the SALT deduction was limited. And I believe Kathy said at our department heads meeting last week that collections are, you know, at the end of December, we were lagging behind. They now are back on track with prior years.
No, I knew that, but based upon the modification to the grand list that they did, instead of going with the $1 million add back, one of the changes was doing the 5-year collection rate and then adjusted by 25 basis points. So I would imagine,
I don't know what you're talking
Yeah.
about.
okay, I'll have to go back and get it, but they changed the formula on one of the, for the Board of Finance, changed the formula on how they calculated part of the collection rate, which is part of the reason why we took out.
I think they changed their assumed rate for calculating mill rate.
Right.
Not
so-
this is the actual collection rate.
Right, but it was based upon a 5-year average.
Yeah.
So, and then they took 25 basis points away from it. So that would mean that I would imagine the 5-year average is going down this year if our.
I think Kathy
never
is
know.
simply being conservative here with her collection rate because she generally does do very well. Any question on her revenues?
Nope.
And you're gonna get tired of me saying this, but status quo budget, and I think we're missing the subtotal in here. We have like a little glitch right there, the advertising being, something happened wrong there. But, no staffing changes, nothing significant in this budget.
Software maintenance and support is just typical for
That's typical,
the annual increases we continue to see, which
yes.
is crazy.
And that cost is actually shared with the assessor's office and the sewer fund.
Okay. Are they broken out?
Yes.
into each?
Yeah, indeed. Okay, next up is legal. And as I said last night, I increased the budget on the assumption that we would see more assessment appeals that need legal counsel involvement in the next fiscal year. And then it should drop off as the years go.
How do you calculate the increase that you're requesting? You talked to,
I looked at, no, I looked at the history of assessment
revaluers?
years.
Yeah, okay.
Is it possible, or at least worth a consideration, I know the Board of Ed is doing this on their FOIA, but hiring potentially a retired person to do some per diem, and therefore we could do certain things in-house during the assessment period at a lower rate than what we're paying our law firm?
The law firm is really to address any people who are appealing their taxes within the legal system, which is their right.
Okay,
They're not
So this-
doing
yeah.
routine day-to-day work, that is done by our staff.
okay.
This is, once if they might go to the Board of Assessment Appeals and still not like what they get.
So
Right.
this is post.
Yes.
Yeah, they actually
Okay.
sue us.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
Yep.
That's
Or there's some legal work that might be involved up front to avoid
this,
Right.
yeah, fine.
a
Yeah,
case.
or we might charge here, if we have to hire an outside appraiser to defend something that we expect is coming, this is
Right.
where it would be charged.
Okay, fair enough.
Okay, town clerk. So what we did here was we eliminated the RTM budget.
You folded it
We
in?
folded it into the town clerk's budget, so the main thing you see is now there's a clerical services line that represents the hiring a clerk to do the minutes for the RTM. The other budget that the RTM had was for office supplies. So you do see some uptick over from prior years but it's not significant.
Smart. Had no impact.
No impact. Okay. So now here's one that, the first part of the Registrar of Voters is just the registry part, not the elections. There are a couple of small increases related to the voter canvass that they have to do every 4 years. So you see an increase in the printing and mailing. That's related to the canvas. There also have an increase in conferences and meetings because we're choosing to train our assistants in some of the same things that the registrars have to be trained in. I think it's good for running the elections. But the real part of the budget is the next one, the elections. This budget assumes a general election and a dual presidential primary. I did suggest to them, I haven't got it yet, but I did suggest to them that it would be worthwhile to give us a breakout on the election and then what one primary would be versus two primaries.
You'll remember that we don't typically
We don't
budget for
budget,
that.
we don't assume any elections,
Right.
you know, if we don't ever assume referendums, but I do think it's a pretty safe bet that there'll be at least one presidential primary.
Mhm.
The question is whether or not we need to plan for two, or if there'll be primaries for any other elections that would be happening in the fall of 2020. And this is a budget here where the state could really give us some relief.
Mhm.
If we were allowed to consolidate voting districts, the locations of the voting districts, it could be much less costly. But because we have 6 districts, and that's done part because of the RTM, the state senate seats, the state rep seats, we have to have, you cannot, you're not supposed to move the voting place outside the district unless there's just no place you can have it. But even then, you're supposed to have it in a contiguous district,
Mhm.
which causes quite a bit of headaches, trying to find a place, trying to staff all these polling places. And we have to do that for every election.
Could we not consolidate our districts, have the same number of representatives to the RTM, but just have them be 3 consolidated districts?
I believe we could, and I believe the registrars were looking at that and, had a plan to do that, but that would also require the agreement of the RTM.
Mhm.
I think that we have some difficulty.
We can talk about it later. It was just an idea.
District 3 is a standalone rep,
Yep.
and 2 and 4 standalone senate. So there would be one district that's odd man out because you can't merge because of the District 3. And you represent
New Canaan must have the same issue. They have only 3 districts and they have a lot of different reps, so.
I think there are ways
I do think our registrars of voters have looked at it.
Yeah.
And I'll follow up with them.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you want to move on to IT.
Everybody good on elections? Okay.
That's also kind of, not to interrupt you, but what we were talking about last night as far as, we really have no control, that's state,
Yeah.
it's state.
It's
Mandated.
state driven, yeah.
Yep.
We don't have a control over it.
Yeah.
And even if they would just allow us with a primary
Yeah.
to be able to consolidate the districts into 1 or 2 polling locations, it would be such a tremendous cost savings.
Yeah.
Even the trainings are state mandated,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
pretty much everything.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. IT?
IT, so 2 things I want to point out here. The software maintenance and support, that does assume a 5% increase for the software maintenance. Some of that could change We may be changing our timekeeping software, so that could change. The other thing is the Information Systems Operations line. That represents our contract with the Board of Ed to provide IT support. They gave a significant increase to one staff member, and that impacted our cost because we share in the cost.
Yep, and you talked about that in the budget driver. Can you elaborate a little bit?
Like, how do you want me to elaborate? I can tell you what we, let's see, I have the letter. So, we pay the full cost of one employee who is assigned to us. We're his primary responsibility, so we pay 100% of his cost.
Okay.
Then we pay 25% of the webmaster. We pay 10% of one technical engineer, 15% of the director of IT, and then we pay 25% of the other technical engineer, and that's where the cost increase is in that last technical engineer.
25% of that one?
We pay 25% of him, and that was the one that,
That was the driver that,
yeah.
the budget driver there. Okay. That's what I was-
Now, isn't webmaster and director the same person?
No,
Okay. Thought they were.
nope, James Flynn, the other James Flynn is the
Yeah.
webmaster.
Okay, all right. That's right.
Are you seeing basically 5% software cost increase every year, pretty much throughout all the systems you look at?
Yeah. It's very rare that they keep those costs flat,
Oh, I
you
know.
know.
5% is a pretty, seems to be the average.
Seems to be the average, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Great.
You know, and I have to say with different programs, you get different things for your support. Like, you know, with Munis, that 5% gets you all your updates. You know, when they upgrade the program, we're not paying extra for that. Some of our other software programs, you want to upgrade it, you've got to pay for the upgrade as well.
Yeah. It's a great racket.
Until it's no longer supported,
Until it's no longer
and you have to
supported,
replace it
yeah.
entirely.
Then you have
Yeah.
to go through a whole new
It's a
learning curve.
vicious cycle.
It's wonderful.
Yeah. Okay?
Okay. Probate is what it is. We're required to pay our share of their expenses. There are some reductions just based on their actuals.
Kate, how does that work with New Canaan? I mean, do we split everything?
We bill them.
Okay.
So yes, we do split everything. And we also, but we charge them for overhead as well,
Mhm.
because we're providing space.
So we don't have to get down to, you know, X% were in Darien cases and.
No, no,
it's
no,
just split
it's
right-
just split right down the middle.
Okay,
Yeah.
I figured that, but.
We don't see the revenue.
The probate court revenues?
Right.
No, we do not.
Hello, Hartford.
State mandate. You were talking about the 16% of things we have to do, that's one of them.
And they see a lot of revenue.
There may be.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay.
So next up would be planning and zoning.
Jeremy was here.
Jeremy has a meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah. There really isn't anything, well, except for the revenues, they,
Do you want me to go see? Because he was sitting here a moment ago,
I'll
which,
go. I can go.
which makes me believe that he
You want us to be
intended to
here?
be here. His meeting's not till 8.
I didn't notice that he had come in.
While we're here and doing it based upon what the Norwalk Economic Development person of 16 days who did a very nice presentation last night, I would be very curious to see what they're doing on the automation side, which he was talking about. And simply because I don't know what we do fully over here. but
Automation in terms of,
online applications
Yeah.
and things.
Yeah,
Well,
we're moving in that
where
direction.
we should be very soon, the mechanical permits, applications for mechanical permits should be available online. They wanted to start with something that was smaller. And then there's money in the capital budget. Actually, Jeremy had asked for money this year to do the affordable housing plan, and for next year, when I say for fiscal '20 to do the affordable housing plan, and for '21 to do more applications online. I flip-flopped them. So we have, if the budget goes through as I proposed, there's funding in the capital budget to allow them to move to the building permits online.
Good evening.
And Jack, you'd be happy to know that planning and zoning is proposing to increase their fees. So you see a significant uptick in the revenue estimates for planning and zoning.
And I know how Jeremy calculates, and it's almost a McKinsey exercise, so.
The decrease in the full-time salary there is because we had a senior employee transfer to another department, and she was replaced with a step one employee, so that's why there's a reduction. It's not a change in staffing levels at all. Other than that, there are no program changes here. In the capital, as I was just saying, Jeremy had requested funding originally for next year for fiscal '21 to do some, to put the other permits online, and I asked to move it up to the next year. I think it's an important service to provide to our residents, to the contractors, and I believe it will actually be beneficial to the employees as well, not dealing with all the foot traffic.
Where does that, in the RFCNRE,
If you go to
Is
the
that under
RFCNRE,
is
the
that-
description of it is on page 10. In the summary, it comes,
is it the web RMS software upgrade?
I'm not seeing it in the summary.
Hmm.
Let me see. Yes, no, that's police.
That's under,
Yeah. Land use software,
there we go.
page 240.
Yep, okay,
And then the description is on page 10.
thanks. Is it a good idea? Generally, I advocate for moving as quickly as we can with online services.
When do you expect the mechanicals to be ready to go?
This week,
Great. Do you have a test applicant?
I think Lisa has, from the building department, has one or two people in mind
Good.
who are a little computer savvy that will be able to hopefully move it through uneventfully, make sure everything works okay. Mechanical permits, air conditioning, plumbing, out of the building department, get that going this week, let that run for a little while, and then upgrade it to everything else.
Perfect. Okay,
Okay?
Yep.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Wow, that was quick.
The next couple things are community services. We have beautification. I'm proposing level funding there.
Kate, can you, I think we've gone through what encompasses this $34,000. Do we have an idea of what the largest expenditure is? Is it the hanging baskets, or is it the labor?
I believe it's all associated with the hanging baskets
Yeah.
and the watering.
Yep.
Yep.
You know, it's, they would like to do more.
Yeah,
They
well,
would like to
so
spend
would we
more.
all.
They asked for some capital funding to, well, they want to beautify Town Hall, refresh the landscaping in front of Town Hall. I reduced that. They had asked for $20,000. I reduced that to $7,000. I don't know if I have all the detail here on the things they had. I know I can look it up in here, but you know, it's one of those things that, yes, they do a nice job, but you know, when we're making some personnel decisions, when we're making other expense decisions, how much we spend to pretty up the front of Town Hall, I just wasn't a priority for me. You know, we keep it clean, we keep it neat, but we're not out to win any awards for our landscaping at Town Hall.
We do appreciate their efforts, though, and to the extent there's work that they're willing to do that, you know, is labor-related, that we don't have to pay for by contract, that's awesome.
Yeah.
We really appreciate it. People are always complimentary of the hanging baskets in Darien, but I concur with you that we have to be mindful of how much we spend.
It'd be nice, because they do the, you know, the things they do with the baskets are lovely, and the work they do with the Adopt a Gardens is very nice. But
Mhm.
I couldn't make it a high priority.
Yep. Okay.
Cemetery in what group now? 'Cause I was-
Monuments and ceremonies.
Monuments and ceremonies.
And Kate, the harbor master, it's a really, really, obviously, very small
There's some
budget.
detail further.
Okay.
Okay,
Maybe-
so, yeah, let's go through,
Okay.
the next page is
Celebrations.
celebrations. So we have, the fireworks is now, that was the overtime for the police, that's now just in the police budget. Program expenses and facility repair, that has to do with the Memorial Day Parade. I reduced those based on what we've actually spent in recent years. You can even see the 3-year history, we generally spend around $1,000.
Mhm.
Holiday lights, the bicentennial celebration, that is a new item, to give some seed money to monuments and ceremonies to
Yep.
do some work on our bicentennial. And then holiday lights and historical society grants have remained the same. And I don't think I brought with me, I do have the information from the Historical Society regarding their request, and I'm sorry, I should have made copies for you all.
We might want to revisit that. I remember when we added this to the budget. We might want to revisit it in terms of reviewing, actually, you know, trying to get a handle on just for public knowledge, the reason why we give this grant is because the Historical Society, A, is awesome, B, keeps all of our historical documents that we don't have here in Town Hall. So that comes at a cost. They're all in temperature-controlled environments. But it might be worth drilling down a little bit more on those actual costs.
Yeah, and it's difficult, I didn't attach them apparently. Looking at the financial statements they sent, you know, in their annual budget, it's difficult to identify
Right.
what is supporting the town documents. So I think we'd need to speak with them
Sure,
and ask them for more specifics.
sure. Might be worth going over and looking at what they store, where it's stored, how it's stored, all those things.
So, is the ceremonies also now monuments and ceremonies?
The
The bicentennial,
bicentennial is monuments and ceremonies.
Yep.
Okay, and that would be their budget, or is their budget elsewhere also?
So monuments and ceremonies has, the two lines, one says program expense, that is for the Memorial Day Parade. That pays for like the sound system and any band. The facility repair and maintenance is some work that they do, replacing flags. Bicentennial celebration will also be them.
So they've also been doing the cemetery cleanups, correct?
They have done some, and they requested money in the capital budget for cemetery cleanup. Some of the cemetery cleanup comes under that facility repair and maintenance.
Okay. One of the funds that you reviewed is the Sarah Wilson Fund.
Yes,
And the
Yes,
Sarah Wilson Fund has about $9,000 in it. Most of it has been accrued interest. It was formulated prior to us adopting Munis, went back 20 years of Board of Selectmen and Beautification Commissions. And I think the agreement is that that fund, since it's been in our annual report for town cemetery maintenance, can be used for capital for those projects.
right, and so they had asked for money to do cemetery cleanup in capital fund, and I cut it out based on the fact that we would be able to use that fund
Perfect,
to do it.
thank you.
Good.
The last one here is the harbor master. I did reduce the budget some on the operating supplies based on the actual expenditures in prior years. Otherwise, it's not a very interesting budget.
Yeah.
Okay. Now I'm gonna skip down to human services if you are all ready.
Skipping over building.
We're skipping over, I didn't think building was on, but I think
Another
it is.
day.
It was on here.
Oh, it is on here.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we can go through building.
It's the next one.
Yep. Okay, so once again, the full-time salary, the reduction there does not represent a change in employees, or in positions. We had a senior employee who retired, and she was replaced with a step one employee. Part-time, that's simply a reduction in the hours planned to be used. And the software maintenance and support, that's because it's covered under the zoning. They use the city view software, so that fee didn't need to be in there. So that $1 needs to come out. I'm not sure how it got left in. But there are no program changes. The one thing, Jen worked with Peter and Jeremy on developing the revenue estimate. We keep assuming, increases for the building permits for the new developments. We are expecting that some of the building permits will start to come in this fiscal year. But that, so you see, we're no longer carrying that big number, thinking that the redevelopment permits will come in. That some of them will come, they will come this year, and so next year there'll be less.
Did you move forward his capital request? Or
It's capital
wasn't
request.
it the filing?
Filing cabinet was $2,500, so that's in the operating budget.
It is. Oh, informational materials. Is that where it is?
No, office furniture and equipment, $2,500, that's a file cabinet.
Oh, there we go, okay.
The information materials, that is to buy
Code books.
new code books,
Yep.
because they come out periodically and not quite a choice.
Yep.
The thing I get concerned about with their filing cabinets is they're going to run out of room. But actually, if things go well, by this time next year, we possibly will have redone that area, rearranged, taken advantage of the wasted space in the hallway, and redone that whole area.
We might have to have a ribbon cutting, because
Yeah.
we've talked about that for so many years now.
Yes.
We have talked about that since John Query was here.
Yeah.
Oh,
so,
my gosh.
Yeah.
Right, it's a goal.
Do we have, my concern is, I just read an article on what's now the Corbin District. And when you start adding up months, and I'm far from knowledgeable on construction, what the timing is, but the fact that they're now going to DOT, and that can take 4 to 6 months. months, and they have to do the building. And then from there, we're sort of like getting into winter time, and I'm not sure that people start breaking ground in the middle of winter. I mean, do we know when shovels hitting the ground on the three major projects, or what the anticipated dates are?
I've heard that Corbin is likely to have a shovel in the ground in April or May.
Of this year?
Yes. They're going to phase their construction. So there might be some construction that doesn't necessarily require that
The DOT.
DOT lead time.
Because they're not doing the area that's out in the park. Gotcha.
Yep. And the other two, I don't know.
Okay. Thank you, that's very helpful.
Yep.
Okay. Human Services? We'll start with Human Services. On page 167, and you might have seen it in the staffing, yes, you would see it in the staffing. Human Services shares an office administrator with the Health Department, and we have changed the allocation to reflect the work that, the bulk of her work is for the Health Department as opposed to Human Services. So you'll see a reduction here in their full-time salary, and an increase in the Health Department in full-time salary. No change in headcount overall, just which department is paying.
Is that administrative secretary? Is that
Office
the-
administrator is, well, it says administrative secretary, the title is actually office administrator.
So that small percentage change of use translates to a fairly significant
Yeah,
dollar.
yeah. In the part-time, we did add some hours this year for the part-time aides. They're, I think, still less than 15 hours a week. They're not at a point where they would get any benefits from the town. Other than that, there's really not much going on here. This is one of those departments where we took the office equipment repair and maintenance out, because we didn't, they'd have $800 in there and hardly ever use it. On the next page, you have the outside assistants. And we reduced the essential needs payment budget based on what the historic actuals have been. The sewer charges coming out are because that was the old town hall homes.
Mhm.
That's now going to be the responsibility of the housing authority.
Mhm.
And then we did increase the blight remediation assistance budget a little bit, based on what we're seeing the needs are. For example, this year we paid for some dumpsters for a couple of our cases to help them clean out the property. So we felt we needed a little bit more money there.
Yeah.
Okay, again, where do the sewer charges go to?
They're the responsibility of the housing authority,
They're all over at the housing authority.
yeah.
Okay.
It might be interesting for people to note, especially members of the RTM, that when we were debating the blight ordinance, we thought that there might be a dozen or so cases, but we've already had 50 properties for which we've had to do some kind of diligence on. Not all are blight, but they still require the time and effort of our staff member to decide whether they
Yeah.
rise to that level or not, so.
I think what we saw at first was about 50% of the complaints we would get were not blight. Some of them, you'd go to the property and you couldn't even imagine what they were. And, I just figured that, hey, neighbors are fighting with one another. But there have been a number that met the criteria, and then there's a number that Nick has on a watch list.
Yep.
Where maybe they have one condition, so he keeps them on a watch list. He does all the same documentation, in case we ever needed to go to court, if they had a second condition come, does all the same documentation, so. You'll see when we get to the fire marshal, next week, I think it is, that we're asking for more hours for that position.
I will say that I really want to compliment the RTM on the job they did with the ordinance, because it was very well thought out and provides excellent guidance for the Blight Review Committee and for the staff member.
We haven't found anyone as of yet.
We're in the
We are
process of that. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
It takes a long time though, and that's
It is,
really
it's-
the good thing about that ordinance is that there's a very diligent process before you get to the point of being fined, which I
No,
think is
yeah,
appropriate.
I agree,
Yeah.
TGSMA did a wonderful job, and the Blight Review Group is very compassionate.
Yeah.
Yep. Mhm.
I do think that's one of the things that for citizens, it's hard to understand, that from the time they call and make a complaint, the time to remediation can be quite long.
Mhm.
But it is a process, and it's designed to protect homeowners.
Yep.
So senior programs.
Kate, I think
Yeah.
I've asked this question before. We have everything as 55 and older.
Mhm.
Is that a state age versus 62 or 65?
I don't know. I think it's a common number, like you can join ARP at 50.
I was just curious
When
as I
do
was
your
reading
senior
it.
discounts? Differs, right?
Yeah, I mean, I was just curious. I think I've asked it before, I just didn't remember the
I don't know, it
answer.
might be
It's
a
not
state definition.
It's not a critical question, but there are so many different ages, all of which I basically can be a member of.
Yeah, me too.
Didn't have to say that.
Oh, well, it's okay. Give me a little humor up here once in a while.
Oh, hey, I went down on my 55th birthday. Okay, so, I did reduce the revenue estimate, to reflect our actual experience. When we get into the expenses, the director had requested additional hours for the chef, to restore it to a full-time position. I didn't feel it could be supported at this time. One of the things we have done this year was gave the chef the authorization to use a delivery service for food rather than her having to go out shopping. And I want to wait and see what we can accomplish with that additional time, because the shopping time had been built into the hours in the day. So I want to see where that goes. You'll notice a reduction in the food and related supplies that, again, based on our actual experience, we're finding that our new chef is manages her budget well, even with the special events, and Beth is looking to increase the number of special food events that they do. She's doing a very good job of managing the food budget. And if you haven't eaten there,
Yeah.
really you should.
She's great and everybody loves her.
Yeah.
She does a wonderful job. Okay.
Okay. Senior transportation, this is the at-home in Darien van. We pay the drivers. They get the gasoline through the town, and then they reimburse us the cost of the wages and the gasoline. What they don't reimburse us for is FICA, Medicare, workers' comp, and the liability and auto insurance. I do think this is something that we should discuss. We are carrying a liability for employees that are not actually ours. We don't control the hiring of them. We don't control the wage increases, which do impact our costs. But the workers' comp and the liability, to me, is a concern. I think we should consider possibly providing a grant to at home rather than paying for these other things.
Mhm. That's a worthwhile exercise to look at that. Where would they buy those coverages from? Are they eligible for any kind of pool?
Well,
nonprofit
they already
pool?
have at least one employee that they're paying, and so they must be
Okay.
covering her for workers' compensation.
Okay.
The one that might be the more difficult is the auto insurance.
Okay.
So they're getting the town rate, is that,
Yes, we technically own the vehicles.
okay.
So if we didn't own them, if they own them, it might be more expensive for them.
Got it.
But we,
what my concern is, drivers are a high cost, high risk.
Yes,
So,
right.
and, so we're, and we don't do this for other organizations. You know. And they, it's a important service to provide, but, we're taking on a risk for employees who are not ours.
So you can still lease the vehicle to the organization and give them a grant to pay for certain things, but would no longer be on your payroll or anything else.
Well, that would be interesting if you still owned the vehicles but leased
Yeah.
them to them. That would be an interesting way to deal with it.
And that way you're, through contract, you can totally get your liability away from yourself,
Yeah.
away from the town.
Yeah.
we also would want to see, and I like that idea, because they're eligible for certain grants. Certain senior transportation related grants through the state of Connecticut, and we would want to make sure that our model doesn't.
Impact that
Yeah.
negatively.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay.
Not being an attorney, but if we still own those vehicles and there's a significant accident, I'm not sure that we wouldn't be also named in the suit also.
We get named in the suits anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Naming
was
is
more
easy,
interested in
collecting
getting rid
is
of the
harder.
workers' comp liability.
Yeah, well, we tend to have deeper pockets than the
Yeah.
organization.
Okay. We should definitely look at
But I
that.
think we should look at it.
I agree. Yep.
It's a little complicated, isn't it?
Mhm.
It is, yes.
Okay.
All right. Next up is the Youth Commission. So I wanted to start out here with pointing out that the revenues for Youth Commission covers the bulk of the department's expenses. The town picks up the net of about $89,000.
Yep.
Okay.
Could I have the page number, please?
We are looking at 182 and 183.
Thank you.
This has always been reported on the gross basis, right? Fees up top.
It is reported on a gross basis, yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
I just wanted to point that out.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, this isn't like the Park and Rec, we redid it this year. This
We're-
is always-
yes, correct.
This has always
Yes,
been this way.
yes.
Mhm.
Right.
This is one department where I eliminated the just-in-case funds. That professional services line was in case we needed an aide for a child attending the daycare, or the summer camp program.
Mhm.
It's rarely been used, and my thinking was we shouldn't tax for it. If it does come up that we need to hire somebody, that's what contingency is for.
Great.
And then program expenses is up a bit. That's driven by things, like this, mainly by the summer camp, things like the cost of buses. But as I said, she covers the majority of her costs with the revenues.
Yep.
Yeah.
Next, we're on to the depot grant. I passed out earlier their backup for their grant request. They did not increase, level funded. And then we did not receive any requests from Kids in Crisis or from Safe Rides. Safe Rides is an old one that will be off, but
Mhm.
we didn't receive anything from Kids in Crisis this year.
We're gonna have a chance to look at the capital side later.
Yes, yes.
I mean, I realize we're touching on some of it now.
Yeah, I don't think, most of these departments haven't had much capital.
No, I understand.
So what about Southwestern Regional Mental
Well,
Health Service?
You know, I'm surprised that I even funded it last year. I don't know how that got in there last year, but
So-
we normally wouldn't fund that, so I don't recall getting a request from them, and
Certainly if we didn't get a request, it would be a good process, but what I had done in the past was talk to our human service department to see how much they rely on.
yeah, and I don't think they've ever supported
Okay.
this.
Well, I do remember when Olive was here, she did support it, but if we didn't receive a request for it, then.
But we've never funded it. This last year is weird that we did last year. Okay, and then the last one up is the health department. Here you see the flip side of that change that we made in human services, where the increase. The other notable thing here is we're reducing the cost of the medical advisor. We've lowered the retainer that we're paying. And so this $3,000 provides for a retainer, which includes some basic services, a public health, I don't know what, not a newsletter, but like an article on public health. I believe it's quarterly. And then some additional hours for if we have a need for, if we have some kind of health emergency. It provides some additional consulting hours.
I'm just curious why that doesn't appear in the text commentary.
So I'm going to say that some of our departments were better than others about doing their text commentary.
Okay. Well, I consider that to be a notable change in the health department, so I would have thought it should have been in the text, but maybe he could provide us with a memo on why he wanted to make the change.
Okay, yeah, I do have, I believe, an email from him on at least the
Great.
specifics of the change.
Great. That would be good enough.
And the other change there, that you see the telecom drop, that's because they've got a state grant that picks up the cost of one of their cell phones.
Just a quick question for explanation, and I'm sorry to put you on the spot. The private sewer disposal permit is just the permit to pick up, because we don't dispose of that, right?
Honestly, Jack, I'm not quite, I don't know what that one is. I can get it,
Okay.
you know,
Thank you. No question on the number, just a question on,
what it is.
yeah.
I'll have to ask.
Okay.
And that was it for tonight.
That's it for tonight. Does anybody have any questions on anything that we reviewed this evening?
Or if there's anything specific you want for tomorrow,
Okay.
and if you don't know it right now, but if you
Sure.
have some questions that you specifically want to know for tomorrow, because we've got some big departments tomorrow.
Yep.
Email me.
Sure.
And,
Tomorrow night is 5:30 PM back here in 206. Park and Rec, Police, Library, Employee Benefits, Risk Management, and Public Works. Yes?
Can you just
tell me where at the beaches the UV meters are? What do they look like?
I think it's at Weed Beach.
It's at Weed Beach.
Yep.
What they look like. I don't remember, there were pictures,
Yeah.
One of our department
Mhm.
meetings.
there were pictures, and they had pictures when they, first put them in, it was in the news, I don't know if they're on the website.
I think it's it's a digital readout
It's a,
of.
yeah, it's a digital readout, and
Yeah.
then I think it has colors below it.
Giving the risk levels.
It's a permanent structure there, it's there all winter though too?
That I don't know. I think we leased them.
Cool. I'll just get it.
I don't know if they're. Yeah, I don't see that they've got pictures on here.
Any other questions for this evening? All right, then we will close tonight's budget workshop and we'll see you here tomorrow evening. Thank you.